When I was 18, I attended evening classes at an art school. Drawing has been my passion since childhood, and recently I've become particularly interested in sketching portraits of people. After finishing my class, I headed home as usual, listening to music as I walked. Autumn is such a beautiful season. It was a bit of a hassle to walk all the way to the crosswalk, so I always crossed the street at an unmarked spot right in front of my apartment building. Suddenly the music in my headphones cut off, and it felt like my entire body seized up for a brief moment. Then the music resumed, and I continued walking home. The next morning I woke up and realized it was Saturday, which meant I didn't have to rush anywhere. I slowly got out of bed, had breakfast, took a shower, and decided to go for a walk. I put my music player in my pocket, popped in my headphones, and wandered around the city with a cheerful heart, watching the people around me. That day, I kept seeing the same woman's face, first in the park, then on the streets, and even in a store. It made me a bit uneasy, as if she was following me. By the time evening came, I was tired and headed back home. The next morning was identical to the one before. I'm not exaggerating. Everything felt exactly the same, from the day itself to the woman who seemed to be following me. I was confused and scared, and I told my parents about it. But it was as if they had agreed not to believe me, insisting that today was completely different and that I was just experiencing déjà vu. This continued for 17 days straight. I had no idea what to do. On the 17th day, I returned home just as I had on the previous days. When I entered my building, the woman who had been following me was there. She attacked me. Her eyes were eerily black, with huge dark circles under them, and she had no eyelashes or eyebrows. I was terrified and tried to escape, but all my efforts were in vain. She screamed at the top of her lungs, her mouth wide open, but none of the neighbors came out to help. She started strangling me, and suddenly I opened my eyes. I was lying in a hospital bed and tears began streaming down my face. I felt awful. It turned out that I had been hit by a car on my way home and had been in a coma. The doctors said they had heard of such experiences before, as the human brain remains active even when in a coma. I still don't know who that woman was. Sometimes I catch glimpses of her in the faces of strangers, but I remind myself that it's just my imagination. I hope I never see her again. That moment is something I'll never forget. I'm a surgeon, and over the years I've treated countless patients. One evening I decided to take a break from everything and go for a walk around the city. As I was strolling, I noticed a man sitting at a bus stop. He didn't seem to notice me, but his face looked familiar. I initially thought I might have seen him at the hospital, and it turned out I had. He was one of my patients, someone I remembered well because he had been in a horrific car accident. Unfortunately, we couldn't save him. I was taken aback. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I walked closer, and he looked right at me. I thought I must be imagining things, so I rubbed my eyes, but he was still there, staring back at me. But it wasn't a solid human figure. It was something white and translucent, almost otherworldly. I was terrified. I've never believed in ghosts or anything like that, but there it was, sitting right in front of me, watching me. I was completely sober, so I know it wasn't just my imagination. A car honked in the background, and when I turned back to look, the spirit had vanished. You might think I'm losing my mind, but this experience has been haunting me. I can't stop thinking about that bus stop. This experience deeply unsettled me. I work in a hospital, and over the years we've had a wide variety of patients, but there was one man who stood out as particularly unusual. He didn't seem like someone struggling with a mental illness. In fact, he appeared quite rational, able to discuss complex topics and often seen reading books. He simply didn't fit the typical profile of an unwell patient. One day he shared a story with me that left me horrified. He had been transferred to our hospital from another facility. According to him, a ghost of a boy about 6 to 8 years old haunts our hospital, seeking revenge on everyone here. The man claimed that he could see the boy and even spoke with him at times. Unfortunately, I can't disclose the boy's name in this account. According to the man, the boy endlessly wanders the hospital's corridors, completely transparent. A ghost. The boy harbours a deep desire to destroy the hospital, whether by burning it down, causing it to collapse, or some other means. The man said the boy had once been treated in this hospital, but he had been admitted by mistake. No one believed him, and as a result, he was prescribed various medications by the doctors. The boy tragically passed away in this hospital in 2008. Though I was initially skeptical of the man's story, my curiosity eventually got the better of me, and I decided to look through the hospital records. To my surprise, I found documentation of a boy who had been treated here in the past. As I was sifting through the records, I suddenly heard a faint, childlike giggle. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The sound seemed to come from behind me, but when I turned around, there was no one there. My rational side told me it was just my imagination, but the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I decided it was time to leave and quicken my pace, eager to escape the eerie silence. As I walked past the room where the boy had supposedly died, I felt a sudden chill. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a dark, empty room, and then, just for a brief moment, I saw him, a small, transparent figure standing in the center of the room, his eyes locked onto mine. He didn't seem angry, but rather he looked sad. Before I could react, he whispered, "Help me," and just as quickly as he had appeared, he vanished. I stood there, frozen, unsure of what I had just seen. After a few moments, I fled the hospital, my mind racing. The next day, determined to uncover the truth, I delved deeper into the boy's case. What I discovered was shocking. The boy had been misdiagnosed, and his death was a preventable tragedy. Driven by a sense of justice, I gathered the evidence and presented it to the hospital administration. The case was reopened, and new measures were implemented to prevent such a tragedy from ever happening again. I never saw the boy's spirit again. And while I still feel a slight unease when walking through the corridors, I'm at peace knowing that his story was finally heard and justice was served. Hello, my name is Nick. I've experienced something terrifying that continues to haunt me to this day. While I was a student, I went on a vacation abroad with some classmates. There were 12 of us, 7 guys and 5 girls. We took a 2-week trip to Thailand. Everything seemed perfect. We were all in high spirits, enjoying the warm weather, the friendly locals, our nice hotel and the beautiful sea. It felt like a dream vacation. On the 5th day of our trip, a few of the guys and I decided to rent mopeds and explore the island, hoping to discover something new. We rented 3 mopeds, and the 6 of us set off in search of adventure. We spent hours riding around the island, even stopping to buy gas from local vendors on the street. As evening approached, we came across an old white building deep in the jungle that looked like a church. There were signs all around it warning people to stay away. There must have been 6 or 8 of them. We found it odd, so naturally, we decided to go inside and see what was there. Inside, we found broken chairs, lots of dirt, and walls covered in strange hieroglyphs. Every inch of the walls was scribbled on. On the ceiling, there was a drawing of some kind of spirit or ghost, something that looked vaguely human, though I couldn't be sure exactly what it was. One of the guys accidentally knocked over an old, eerie-looking jug which shattered. We were uneasy for a moment, but we didn't think much of it. After snapping a few photos, we headed back to the hotel. 3 years have passed since that trip, and in that short time, 3 of our friends who had entered that church have died. Each year, one of our friends has been taken from us, and there's a disturbing pattern to it. The first friend died in a car accident in January 2022. The second friend fell out of a window in January 2023, which was ruled an accidental death. The third friend, the one who had broken the jug in the church, became reclusive, cutting off all communication for the last 6 months, and in January 2024, he took his own life. Now there are only 3 of us left, and we're convinced that this isn't just a coincidence. We keep thinking that this is all connected to that abandoned church we weren't supposed to enter. It seems like our lives are being claimed one by one because of that visit. We're all terrified, especially with January 2025 approaching. This incident occurred approximately 5 to 6 years ago. Reflecting on how my friend returned from beyond to save my life evokes a mixture of fear and pride within me. It was a Friday, and the day had proven to be quite challenging. After finishing work, my wife and I opted to make the most of our evening by heading to our country house post-dinner. The country house was situated 40 miles from our home. As we drove about halfway, I began to feel drowsy, prompting me to increase the volume of the music and sing along to stay alert. My wife joined in, and we found ourselves singing and smiling, reminiscing about our college experiences. The atmosphere was delightful until a haunting memory resurfaced. I had a best friend with whom I shared a desk throughout our school years. We were inseparable, and he held immense significance in my life. We even attended the same college and pursued the same field of study. He was an exceptionally kind individual. Tragically, one fateful evening he lost his life. While walking home, he encountered two young men harassing a girl. He bravely intervened to defend her, but sadly he lacked the strength to protect his own life. I switched off the music and we continued our journey in silence. The road was well maintained but poorly lit. Suddenly I perceived my friend, whether a spirit or ghost, standing in the road ahead of the car. I abruptly applied the brakes and he passed right through the vehicle. Feeling apprehensive about exiting the car, I opted to reverse, only to find no one there. My wife, who had not witnessed anything, dismissed my experience as mere imagination. We resumed our drive, and just 2 minutes later, he appeared once more. I braked sharply again and exited the car, but the road was empty. My wife insisted I was merely fatigued, yet I remained convinced of what I witnessed. I reduced my speed and we continued on our way. After approximately 2 miles, we encountered a horrific accident involving 3 vehicles, a truck and 2 cars. One of the cars was utterly mangled. The collision had occurred mere moments before our arrival. We tried to provide first aid, but it was too late to help anyone. We called the police and an ambulance. Sometime later, my wife and I talked about what happened, and I told her that I had seen my friend on the road and insisted that he was the one who saved us. She said she didn't see anyone, but I'm convinced that he saved us. If it hadn't been for his appearance, we wouldn't have stopped, and we might have been involved in that horrific accident.